Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again for yet another top 10 designer winter list, so stay tuned for that. And if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. Really do appreciate it. So winter is one of my favorite times of year. Lots of great fragrances can be worn. I love the heavier, thicker fragrances, and so for me, fall, winter, definitely the best time for fragrances without a doubt. I'm going to start the list off with one honorable mention. It is only an honorable mention because it is recently, or has been recently, discontinued. So as I mentioned in a previous top 10, I've decided to have like the privé and private lines for designers to still be designer fragrances because frankly, they still fit that definition of a designer brand. Just because they're more expensive, maybe a little bit different, doesn't mean they're not designer. So the honorable mention, Plum Japanese. I might do a full review on this one just because I don't think I have, and I do have this nice 30ml decant. And this is such a beautiful fragrance. Like, it took a while to grow on me. It's like plum, spicy, very unique smelling, very different smelling. I find it's very interesting to wear. I've gotten good feedback from this one. And it is one that I think stands out a lot. I think it's one that does definitely do the job of getting you noticed because it's different and it is really enjoyable to wear. Performance is good, but as I mentioned, recently discontinued, so it's an honorable mention. I don't usually like to include too many discontinued fragrances, mostly because, well, you may not be able to get them or the prices are insane. So that is the honorable mention, Plum Japanese. Top 10 list, I'm going to jump right into it. No real order here. Just going to be 10 fragrances. I think the first one I'm going to start it off with is just because it's the cheapest, and that is Dark Rebel. Actually, this one is discontinued too. So you know what? I'm going to make it also an honorable mention. I heard this was discontinued. This is a really great boozy tobacco leather fragrance. Very inexpensive. Performance is dreadful. But it's only $20, although I think the price has gone up because it's getting harder and harder to find. Although if you do like this DNA and you still want to get a nice cheapie from John Varvatos, the Dark Rebel Rider does the job very, very well, and I do actually enjoy it quite a bit. So that's going to be another honorable mention. So into the list, into the actual list now, and I'm going to start off with another cheapie, which is Encry Noir à l'Extrême. And if you like that Encry Noir DNA, if you want a really heavy, sort of earthy vetiver fragrance, I mean, honestly, Encry Noir is one of the best lines for that. And I really think it's one of the best vetiver fragrances, vetiver dominant fragrances that you can get. So if you want to have something that's a little bit more masculine, a little bit mysterious, because it does have that dark quality, and something that is inexpensive but different, this is a good one. Now, this is a bit polarizing of a fragrance. I've gotten very good responses from people smelling this one on me, but it is one that a lot of people don't like. A lot of people love this fragrance. A lot of people are not big fans of it. So you do want to make sure to check it out. If you can, it's pretty cheap to buy, to blind buy, so it's not too risky of a blind buy, but you may not like it. For me, I love this one personally. Okay, next on the list is a returner and a good one. So that is Azzaro Wanted by Night. So aside from having a really cool bottle, so it does look kind of like a revolver with the name Wanted, it makes perfect sense, but it also smells really good. This is very, very sweet, which is one reason why I think it's much better in the fall or winter. It's great for the evening, it's good for dates. I find that this one's gotten me a lot of good responses from women, which is what you would want on a date fragrance. It's sweet. There's cinnamon in there. That adds a nice depth. The orange in this is actually really quite nice, and it's very watery. So it's almost an aquatic opening with how watery that orange comes off to me. Very sweet, very strong performer as well. So again, this one is going to cut through that temperature, cut through the cold, and it's one that is absolutely fantastic, easy to wear, and I believe also fairly inexpensive if you look on the discounters. Next one on the list, I don't actually have a bottle of this one, but I think it is a fantastic one. I always intend to put it on these lists, and I often don't, just because I don't have a bottle. The reason I don't have a bottle is because it does remind me a lot of another niche fragrance, which I'll get to in a second, but the fragrance in question is Paco Rabanne 1 Million Privé. So this is like honey and cinnamon. There is tobacco in this one, but I don't get a lot of it. It reminds me a lot of Wajon. If you're familiar with that fragrance, it has that similar DNA, and it smells amazing. So it's very gourmandy with that honey and the cinnamon, and it just smells so good. It's probably one of the best 1 millions. I know it's probably one of the best received ones. Lucky is also good, but I do prefer Privé just because I find Lucky is quite youthful, which is fine, but I'm a little bit older, so I don't really like wearing super youthful fragrances most of the time. But it is good. I do enjoy it, and other people like Lucky as well. So, Paco Rabanne 1 million Privé. Next one. I have the 2010. You know it had to be on the list. I have the 2010. But the 2018 version is still pretty good. It's not as good. And this is from the private collection of Christian Dior, and that is Leather Oud. So I will say the 2010 version has insane performance, easily 12 plus hours. The 2018 doesn't last as long from what I've gathered of it. It's just this beautifully done, very elegant, very classy, it comes off as a bit more of a traditional man's fragrance, and this is why I think a lot of women do kind of like it. Not that it smells overly traditional, but it does fit that mold of, a man's fragrance. It's very musky, animalic. It doesn't come off exceptionally dirty. As I've mentioned before, the 2010 does sometimes have a bit of a poopy smell. You don't really get that in the 2018, but it's just so beautifully done, so luxurious, so well crafted, that it's one of my favorite Dior fragrances. And if I could find the 2010 batch for a good price, I would pick it up. But like I said, the reformulation is still pretty good, and it still has that heart of animalic, musky nature to it, so it's still pretty damn good. Now, next one on the list, one I want to do a full review of soon, and that is Stronger With You Intensely. Now, I tend to prefer this one for the winter exclusively over even the fall, because it is so much more, it is really a much more intense version of Stronger With You. It's way sweeter, it's way stronger, and so a lot of people can easily find this one to be perhaps a little too much. So do be aware of that. If you think Stronger With You is already bordering on too sweet, this one is going to be too much for you, no questions asked, because it's even more strong, more sweet. But I love how it's done. I think it has an additional leather note in there too, which does add a little bit of a nice dimension to it. But because it is so strong, because it projects and performs so well, definitely one for the winter. The next one, I think it's worth a try for a lot of people. I know I've mentioned this line before. My favorite is actually not this one. I'm not a huge fan of the line, but I think it's worth mentioning because there are a lot of good fragrances. And I actually just bought the deodorant for this fragrance, not this exact one. So I did just buy the deodorant of Terra Hermes. I'm going to do a video on, I think, some of the deodorants that I bought. I do actually really like the deodorant for this one because you get a lot of that dirty citrus and vetiver, and it's done really well. But I want to, wear it a little bit more, figure out the performance on it. But this is the Eau Intense Vetiver. Now, despite the name, I don't find this one to be super intense or super, way more vetiver heavy or anything like that over the original or any of the other flankers for that matter. I do get a lot of this. This one has a Chez Swan note, which I can definitely pick out. And it is, if you like the Terra Hermes line, or if you haven't tried it, I think it's definitely an interesting one to give a chance to. Of course, this is a sample before you buy. I think the fragrance itself and the line is one of those very timeless, sort of masculine kind of fragrances, but being that it is the way that it is with that dirty orange, a lot of people, it is one that is a little bit hit and miss. So a lot of people like this one, a lot of people don't. It is a bit of a polarizing fragrance in that regard. Now, my favorite, as I mentioned, I love Eau Très Fraîche, but that one's not as suitable for the winter. I prefer that for spring and summer. But this one, definitely worth the try, and I think it's worth getting your nose on, seeing if you like it. So, that is Terra Hermes Eau Intense Vetiver. Now this one, next one, has made the list before, and honestly, You could replace it with the original, which I'll get to in a second. It is from the house of Rainier. I don't know how to say the name, but it's Insurrection 2 Wild. Now, this is essentially a clone of Pure Havane, and I will say, the one thing I have liked about this fragrance is that it's matured very well. So when I first bought it, when it was brand new, it didn't smell as good as it does now. So it is one that with age actually does start to smell better, but it still smells good, or smelled good when I first bought it. I think with age, a little bit more of that sort of honeyed vibe has come out with this one. But I definitely consider this one to be a little bit more of a cherry tobacco. It's very close to Pure Havane, but it's not, to me, it's not a one-to-one clone. And if you really want Pure Havane, you should buy Pure Havane, which could easily fit in this spot. But this one, about $20, very nice, high-quality bottle. I like the way this bottle looks. It looks expensive, even though it's not. And so it's one that also for display purposes, I think works really well, just because it looks really nice. And it performs extremely well. And I think, you know, at least from what I've heard, newer batches of Pure Havane don't actually perform that well. So this is another alternative, or good alternative, for that reason, because it does perform quite good. Now, the next one on the list, don't have a bottle of it. But I did have a decant, and I did really like it. I think there's a lot of potential for it. I think it's a good fragrance, and that is L'Homme Ideal Extreme. So this fragrance is kind of like this one in the sense that it's a cherry tobacco fragrance. It does have other dimensions to it, so it doesn't smell the same. It doesn't smell like a Pure Havane clone. It doesn't smell like this fragrance. But it does have some similar DNA there with the fact that it is this cherry tobacco fragrance. Performance is very, very good. It has, you know, I get around 8 hours with it, and it does project pretty decently for the, you know, first couple of hours. Dry down for that one does remind me a little bit of like red tobacco. It has that sort of almost cocoa-y tobacco vibe there, and I do really like that one. So I think it's an excellent choice as well. And so the last one, we're now into the top of the list, although these weren't ranked, but the very last one, number one on the list, is none other than Spice Bomb Extreme. And of course, you know, this one is talked about a lot. It's been on lists. It's been on everyone's list a million times, and, you know, for very, very good reason. I mean, the thing is with this fragrance that it's probably going to be recommended for years to come, because I think it is probably going to be a long time before something as good as this is released in the designer world, or something better than this. If you were watching Ash Gents' video, he did a tournament, and this one came out top for fall. I would agree with him that I think it's even better for winter than fall. But you know what? This is just such a good designer fragrance. Even to this day, you know, I mean, this one isn't that old, but the original Spice Bomb was released quite a while ago. And this one just performs really well, you know, and it smells amazing. So very peppery in the opening, has vanilla in the sort of undertones. This has tobacco in it, but I don't really consider it a tobacco fragrance. This is not heavy on the tobacco. It's more of a sweet, spicy. And like I said, it opens very peppery. That tones down. In that mid there, I get a little bit of a Coca-Cola vibe, which reminds me of Coca-Cola gummies. I think it's the combination of the spices and the vanilla that gives me that impression. Now, I have an older one. I will say, I got this in 2018. Somebody said the performance on newer batches really stinks. That's maybe possible. But this fragrance is, at least from 2018, it performs amazingly. Easy 8 hours longevity, good sillage, and, you know, great projection for the first 2-3 hours. Now, this one dries down, as I mentioned, or haven't mentioned. The dry down, this one is more sweet than spicy. So I find that it opens spicy sweet and dries down sweet spicy. But this one is sure to please. The only thing to be aware of, at least from my 2018 bottle, it's extremely strong in the opening. So the first half an hour or so is super peppery. So you might want to be careful with that. You might want to spray it a little bit before you plan on going out. But you know what? That's up to you. Anyways, guys, that is my list. Leave some comments down below. What are you looking forward to wearing from the designer fragrances this fall? Let me know. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.